Welcome back, everybody. Now that we have understanding about the directory tree structure, in the next couple of videos we're going to be looking at different commands and how to use the Linux file system and how to do different things on the Linux terminal. And in this video we're going to be looking at wget, curl, vim, grep, diff, useradd, and the passwd command, which basically helps us to change password of users in Linux. Without further ado, let's get to it. So if I wanted to download a file from the internet, and we're going to be playing around with a couple of files in this video, so what I like to do is go to my GitHub account where I can download a few files there, or maybe just one. So if you navigate to github.com/direct-io, I keep a couple of files here, and if you go to the global mantics, let me just go into this one and see if I can find a file for us to play with. I'll go here and let's make use of this vars.yaml file. And by the way, YAML is a configuration file we're going to be using a lot in the entire DevOps journey. I'm going to click on raw here so that I can have just a file to play with. So what I like to do is to download this file from the internet straight onto my Linux terminal. So I would copy the entire URL and use a command called wget. You should have this by default on your server, so I would just paste this, and what's going to happen is it will download this file and give it a name, vars.yaml. As you can see, it's connected to GitHub 200 OK, and that's a success code. That's a code for success in HTTP. And if I do an ls, as you can see, we have the file. And sure enough, let's do a less. And less is another way to view a file if you don't want to see the whole file at once. So less, it's gonna show me the file. As you can see, infrastructure, DC, env. And what do we have here? You can see it's just the same thing, right? So that's wget, and let's try another command that we can use to do the same thing, which is curl. Now you may not have curl by default. You're gonna have to use apt to install it. We've done that in previous videos, and there's a special episode that I've recorded on package management where we actually go deep into the whole package management aspect of Linux. So with curl, I would paste the command as well and put a flag -- output, and I'll give it a name. Let me name it curl_vars.yaml, just to show that this is the file we use curl to download. Let's see if we have the file. Sure enough, and there's still less on this as well. As you can see, it's done pretty much the same thing. Now let's rename this one so that we don't lose track of how it got downloaded in the first place. So move vars wget underscore, oops, not wet. What does that even mean? wget underscore vars.yaml. Right, clear the screen, ls, and we have wget underscore vars and curl underscore vars. Now the next command I want to introduce is the vim command. Now vim is a utility that we use to manipulate text files. You could use it to read and change and insert and delete and do all sorts of things with it. And there are so many text editors in Linux. So Vim is one of them, my favorite. There is Nano and a couple of the. Now Vim and Nano are the most popular. I think a lot of people use Vim over Nano. I use Vim. And sometimes you see some people use VI. I use VI most of the time. It's the same thing. Either you're using Vim or VI, it's the same tool really. So first of all, let's try with Vim. What I like to do is to open the wget version of the file, open it up, and I want to add some text in here. To do that, you need to press the I key on the keyboard As you can see below, we have the insert mode activated. So what I'll do is I'll just hit enter to go down and add some random text in here. I'll just say I am learning to become a DevOps engineer. Alright, and to save this file, I would hit on the escape on my keyboard and shift colon and W for write, Q for quit, enter. And what do we have? If I do a less on wget verse, you can see the update is right there. Okay, and if I do Q, that will just take me out of the less console. Now the difference, one of the differences between less and cat is if I did cat, that will just dump everything to the screen, and I'd have to use either the clear command or Control L to just clear the whole thing. But if it was the less, what happens is I can just press Q and it just, you know, takes me back. Now the next command I'd like to show you is the diff. Now we made a change to wget underscore vars, which is obviously now different from the curl version of the download that we had. So we're going to use the diff command to get the difference between the two. So this is, if you want to check the differences between two files, really, I would just say diff wget and then curl. So the two files will be right in front of each other, and as you can see, it's telling me exactly what makes these files different from each other. Now what I want you to notice is the data that's at the top, especially the one at the first column. It's telling me that on line 5 there is a new text which makes these two files different. If let's say this file has like thousands of lines, and it's telling me on the 784th line there is this change, and by the way, there might be a lot of changes. If I wanted to go into this file and figure out where exactly that change is, I could just open with my V. This time around, let's use VI. So VI wget, and what I like to do at this point is to hit on the escape, shift colon, and type in set numbers. Oops, set number, more like it. And as you can see, we're actually on number 6. So the number 5 is just like giving us an idea of where the changes. Sometimes it's more accurate, it's going to give you exact number, but in this case it's a number 6, but at least you get the point of what we're doing. Now there's more. If you take note of the other numbers here, if you also take note of these less than signs, this diff command is giving us an idea of how to treat both files if we do want them to come back to become the same. So essentially we've seen that the first one is given an idea of where the change is in the first file. As you can see, wget vars is the first column and this is the second file, so that's why there's a comma in between the two. And on the other file where we have 8d4, I'm not sure what the 8 is, but you can see D here is a representation for delete, saying if you were to delete 4 of these lines, then you'll be able to bring the two files back to the same. So the diff command is very powerful, and if you want to have a few more idea on what other flags that you can put to, you can check the man page, and as you can see, you can read through that to see the different options that you can put to it. The next command I would like to talk about is the useradd command. user add. If I want to add a user to the system, let's say we have a new user in our company and his name is Peter, then I would say useradd -m Peter. Now -m is going to help me to create a home directory for Peter. And by the way, I'd like to use the sudo command, and we're going to get into that in more detail soon. But sudo, like I said in previous videos, it's going to help me have an elevated permission to do this type of operation. So if I hit enter on that and put my password, as you can see, it's been created, even though we don't have any sort of message. If I do an ls on the home folder, now we have Peter. What we had before was just Darry, now we have Peter. So let's say I do an ID on Peter. As you can see, the user ID for Peter is 1001 and the user ID for Darry is 1000, and that's how it would increase. But if you notice, Peter was created but password wasn't specified. So we created the user, but the user doesn't actually have a password to his name. So what we would do in this case is to use another command to set the password. Using a sudo command again, I would say sudo passwd Peter. Enter, and it's asking me what's the new password for Peter. I'll give it another, I'll give it a Peter, and now I have to retype what I typed previously, Peter. As you can see, password updated successfully. Now what I'd like to do is to also introduce to you a new command called grep. I think we've used it in previous videos, but whether we've used it or not, I'm going to show you in this video. But before I do that, there is a configuration file called etc password. So let's do an ls on that, ls etc password. Remember when we talked about the directory structure that etc is used for storing configuration files. So there's a configuration file that specifies the names of the users in the system, and let's see if this file actually exists, and sure enough it does. Let's actually do ls with more information. Right, so this user, as you can see here, it's owned by the root user. Again, we're going to talk more about permissions very soon. And let's say we want to do, first of all, let's do an ls on this file, just so that you can see the content. So actually, as you can see, there are a bunch of users already here. So quit, but let's search for the user that we just created. So if I wanted to search for something like a string within a file, there's a command called grep we can use. So sudo grep Peter from etc password, and look at that, it's giving me some information about Peter, and it says the home / Peter is the home directory, bnsh is the default shell interpreter, and we can do the same thing for Darry, and sure enough we have that. Let's say we want to do it for something that doesn't exist. See, nothing comes back. So grep is a very powerful tool that we can use to do this type of operation. And by the way, if you want to see all the different flags to grep, again you can use the man tool to read a lot more about that. To quit. Now there's another way we can do the same thing, but using it in conjunction with either less or cat, and this is a common use, especially when you're working on the Linux file system. So let's use one of the files that we had previously. Let's make use of the wget vars, and if I wanted to cat the content of this file, as you already know, it's going to dump everything on the computer. What if I want to search everything that has es? Now I'll use the same cat by using my up arrow to bring back the previous command, and pass that to a pipe. So if you find a pipe on your keyboard and then type in grep, so what that means is all the content that would have been dumped on the screen, it's no longer going to be dumped on the screen. It's actually going to be dumped into this pipe symbol here, and after it's been piped, then grep will kick in to extract the string that we're looking for. So let's say we're looking for es. As you can see, it's not giving back everything like it did before, rather it's telling us every line of the file that has es, and it's doing a very good job by even highlighting them in color. Similarly, the same thing can be achieved even if we used less. Finally, let me talk about one more command, which is the history command. Now, history command is going to help us to bring back all the commands that we've been using, and if you want to go back in time to see the different commands that we've been using in this course, just type in history and it's going to bring it back to you. Now, there is another smart way to use this. If let's say there is something specific you're looking for, you can use the recursive search, and if I type in Control R, you can see I beg your pardon, reverse search, you can see the reverse I search prompt. So let's say I want to use one of the 3 commands that we used previously. If I type in tr, it's gonna start giving me suggestions of which of the 3 in the history I want to use. And if I keep on typing Control R, it will start changing into the different commands that has 3 in it, or that has tr, because I haven't even finished typing 3. And if I keep pressing Control R, it will just keep going until it gets to the end where there is no longer an entry for tr. As you can see in this here, it's not 3, it's a tr, so there's ls minus tr, one of the commands that we've run previously. And what if I continue typing 3? And because it's gone to the end, it won't bring back anything. So to make use of this, I could just hit on the end key on the keyboard, or the arrow, or any of those to bring it on the terminal, and I can just hit enter. So rather than typing ls minus ltr /dev, I don't have to do all of that. I could just go to Control R and type in something. Let's say I type in I. See, history has come back because I've used it recently. How about in? See, so this is a very good way of working smart on the Linux operating system. Alright, this is where we're going to end this video. I hope it's been very informative for you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe.